Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The Sky City, once a majestic haven floating above the world, was now nothing more than a shattered ruin, a colossal wreck of stone and magic strewn across the landscape. It had been a beacon of hope, a sanctuary of knowledge, and a fortress of power for the mages who had ruled it. Now, it was a testament to their hubris, a grim reminder of how far even the greatest could fall. The land beneath the ruins was scarred, the kingdoms below embroiled in endless wars over the remnants of the city's magic. The fall of the Sky City had not just destroyed a place, it had plunged the entire world into chaos. Edmund stood on the edge of the ruins, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of broken towers and crumbling walls. He was a young warrior, his body lean and strong from years of training, his eyes hardened by the battles he had fought. But there was something more to him, something that set him apart from the other soldiers who had been sent to the ruins. Edmund had a past shrouded in mystery, a past that even he did not fully understand. He had always felt a connection to the Sky City, as if some part of him had been left behind when it fell. The Council of Mages had chosen him for this mission, believing that his latent magical abilities would help him uncover the secrets hidden within the ruins. Seraphina, the leader of the council, had been cryptic in her instructions. She had spoken of ancient prophecies, of a destiny that awaited Edmund within the heart of the city. But Edmund had little patience for riddles. He was a warrior, trained to face his enemies head-on, not to unravel the twisted threads of fate. Yet, he could not deny the pull he felt toward the city, as if some unseen force were guiding him toward it. As he descended into the ruins, Edmund was acutely aware of the dangers that awaited him. The city's defenses, once formidable, had been corrupted by the fall. Magical traps lay dormant, waiting to spring on the unwary. Creatures born of the city's magic, twisted and deformed by its destruction, roamed the ruins. But Edmund was not afraid. He had faced worse in his time, and he had survived. He would survive this as well. The path through the ruins was treacherous, the ground uneven and littered with debris. Edmund moved cautiously, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, ready to draw it at the first sign of danger. He was not alone in his quest. Other seekers had come to the ruins, drawn by the promise of the city's secrets. Treasure hunters, rival mages, and warlords, all seeking to claim the power that had once belonged to the Sky City. Edmund knew he would have to face them, as well as the dangers of the ruins themselves, if he was to succeed in his mission. He was joined by a small group of companions, each with their own reasons for venturing into the ruins. Lyra, a rogue mage with a dark past, had been hired by the council to assist Edmund. She was a skilled sorceress, her magic sharp and deadly, but her motives were her own. Jackson, a seasoned soldier, had fought in the wars that had ravaged the world after the fall of the Sky City. He sought redemption, a chance to atone for the lives he had taken. Mirabelle, a scholar obsessed with the lost knowledge of the Sky City, had volunteered for the mission, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within the ruins. Together, they made their way deeper into the city, their progress slow but steady. The ruins were a labyrinth of broken walls and collapsed buildings, with danger lurking around every corner. But as they explored, they began to uncover clues that suggested the fall of the Sky City had not been an accident. Ancient writings, preserved in the fragments of enchanted stone, spoke of a great sacrifice made to protect the world from a terrible force. Ghostly echoes of the city's inhabitants, their memories trapped in enchanted crystals, revealed glimpses of a desperate struggle, a battle against an enemy that had threatened to destroy everything. The deeper they went, the more the truth began to emerge. The Sky City had been more than just a sanctuary for mages, it had been a fortress, a last line of defense against a force that the mages had fought to contain for centuries. The city's fall had not been a random disaster, but a deliberate act, a necessary sacrifice to prevent the release of that force. The mages had chosen to destroy their own city to save the world, a decision that had cost them everything. The revelation shook Edmund to his core. He had come to the ruins seeking answers, but what he had found was something far more dangerous. The force that had threatened the world was still out there, still waiting to be unleashed. And now, it seemed, it was up to him to decide whether to continue the sacrifice or to risk everything by ending it. The group eventually discovered a hidden chamber deep within the ruins, a place untouched by the destruction that had befallen the rest of the city. The chamber was filled with magical artifacts, relics of a time long past, but one object stood out among the rest, a device of immense power, pulsating with a faint, eerie light. It was a relic, an ancient creation designed to hold back the world-ending force that the mages had fought to contain. As they examined the device, they found an ancient prophecy inscribed on the walls of the chamber. The prophecy spoke of the fall of the Sky City and the rise of a new champion, a warrior who would be forced to make a choice that would determine the fate of the world. The prophecy was clear: Edmund was that warrior, and the choice was his to make. He could use the relic to continue the cycle of sacrifice, maintaining the balance of the world, or he could destroy it, unleashing the force it contained but potentially freeing humanity from the cycle. The revelation caused a rift among Edmund's companions. Lyra, driven by her own dark history, argued for destroying the relic and ending the cycle of sacrifice, no matter the cost. She had seen the devastation that the mages' actions had caused and believed that the world could not endure another sacrifice. Jackson, pragmatic and weary of war, advocated for preserving the status quo, fearing the unknown consequences of unleashing the force contained within the relic. Mirabelle was torn, fascinated by the possibilities of the relic but fearful of what might happen if it were destroyed. Edmund listened to their arguments, but in the end, the decision was his alone. He was the one who had been chosen by the prophecy, the one who had been guided to the chamber. The weight of the world rested on his shoulders, and he could feel the burden pressing down on him, threatening to crush him under its weight. He thought of the Sky City, of the mages who had sacrificed everything to protect the world. He thought of the wars that had ravaged the land since its fall, of the countless lives that had been lost. He thought of the future, of what might happen if the cycle were allowed to continue, or if it were broken. In the end, Edmund made his choice. He would destroy the relic, no matter the cost. He believed that humanity must be freed from the cycle, even if it meant facing the unknown dangers that lay ahead. He could not allow the world to be held hostage by a force that had already caused so much suffering. It was time to end the cycle, to break free from the past and forge a new future. With a heavy heart, Edmund raised his sword and brought it down on the relic. The device shattered under the force of the blow, releasing a blinding light that filled the chamber. The ground shook, and the walls of the chamber began to crumble as the force contained within the relic was unleashed. Edmund and his companions barely escaped the chamber as the ruins of the Sky City began to collapse further. The world outside was shaken by the power unleashed from the relic, and the skies above darkened as the force spread across the land. But as the dust settled, the darkness began to lift, and the first rays of a new dawn broke through the clouds. Edmund stood on the edge of the ruins, watching as the world began to change. The land was scarred, the landscape forever altered by the power unleashed from the relic. But there was hope. The cycle had been broken, and the world was no longer bound by the sacrifices of the past. The future was uncertain, but it was a future that humanity would face on its own terms. As Edmund and his companions prepared to leave the ruins, he reflected on the choices that had been made. The question of whether his decision was the right one lingered in his mind, but he knew that it was a question that would be answered in time. For now, all he could do was move forward, carrying the weight of his choice with him. The ruins of the Sky City were silent now, the echoes of its past fading into history. But Edmund knew that its legacy would live on, not as a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made, but as a symbol of humanity's resilience, its ability to rise above even the greatest of challenges. And so, with the dawn of a new day, Edmund and his companions began their journey back to the world below, leaving the ruins of the Sky City behind them. The future awaited, and though it was filled with uncertainty, it was also filled with possibility. The world was scarred, but it was also reborn, and it was up to them to shape it into something better. As they descended from the ruins, Edmund could feel the weight of the past lifting from his shoulders. The choice had been made, the sacrifice had been ended, and now, for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of peace. The world would never be the same, but perhaps that was a good thing. Perhaps, in the end, the fall of the Sky City had been the beginning of something new, something better, and with that thought in mind, Edmund stepped into the light of the new dawn, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. Edmund walked through the quiet aftermath of the ruins, the echoes of the shattered relic still reverberating in his mind. The others followed him, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and contemplation. The sky above was clear now, the dark clouds that had swirled ominously over the Sky City finally dissipating, revealing the soft glow of a rising sun. But the peace that had settled over the landscape did little to soothe the turmoil within Edmund. The journey back to the world below was a slow, arduous one. The path they had taken into the ruins was no longer the same, altered by the destruction unleashed from the relic. Jagged rocks and debris littered the ground, and every step felt like a reminder of the cataclysmic choice Edmund had made. The others were quiet, each lost in their thoughts, the weight of what had transpired pressing down on them as heavily as it did on him. As they descended, Edmund couldn't help but reflect on the decision that had forever changed the course of the world. The relic, with its ancient and terrifying power, was no more. He had shattered it, releasing a force that had shaken the foundations of the world, a force that was now free. And yet, as terrifying as that prospect was, Edmund felt an odd sense of relief. The cycle of sacrifice was over. The future, whatever it might hold, was now untethered from the burdens of the past. The silence between them stretched on until it was finally broken by Jackson. "Do you think we did the right thing?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if he were afraid of the answer. Edmund paused, turning to look at the soldier. Jackson's face was lined with weariness, the scars of battles both physical and emotional etched deeply into his features. There was no simple answer to his question. Edmund knew that the choice they had made was one that could not be undone, and the consequences were something they would all have to live with. "We did what we thought was best," Edmund replied, his voice steady. "The world will change because of it. But it was a change that needed to happen. We couldn't keep repeating the same mistakes, bound by the fear of the unknown. Now, we have a chance to build something new." Lyra, who had been walking a few steps behind them, snorted softly. "New, yes. But better? That remains to be seen." Her tone was sharp, but there was no venom in her words, only the harsh pragmatism that had defined her throughout their journey. Mirabelle, ever the scholar, spoke up with a note of cautious optimism. "We've unleashed something powerful, something ancient. But the world has survived great changes before. Perhaps this will be the catalyst for something greater, a new era of discovery, of magic reborn." Edmund considered her words as they continued their descent. Mirabelle's hope was tempered by the reality of their situation. The world was on the brink of something new, but whether it would be an era of rebirth or of destruction was uncertain. The power they had released could just as easily bring ruin as it could renewal. the landscape began to change as they moved further from the ruins. The twisted remnants of the Sky City gave way to the more familiar terrain of the world below, rolling hills, dense forests, and the distant silhouettes of the mountains that marked the boundaries of the known world. The air felt different here, less charged, as if the magic that had once saturated the Sky City had finally dispersed, leaving only the natural world behind. They reached a small clearing where they decided to rest. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the ground. Edmund sat on a fallen log, the weight of his armor suddenly oppressive. He removed his gauntlets and flexed his fingers, feeling the cool breeze against his skin. The others found places to sit, the silence returning as they each grappled with their thoughts. After a while, Lyra stood up, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "So, what now? We've done what we came here to do. The relic is destroyed, the city is nothing but rubble, and the world is changed. Do we just go back to our lives, pretending that everything's fine?" Jackson sighed, leaning back against a tree. "What lives? We've all been changed by this. There's no going back to what we were before. Not after everything we've seen." Mirabelle nodded, her eyes distant as if she were already thinking of the next steps. "There's still so much we don't understand. About the force we released, about what the mages were truly fighting against. We've only scratched the surface. Perhaps our journey isn't over yet." Edmund remained silent, listening to his companions as they voiced their uncertainties and hopes. He knew they were right, this was not the end. The fall of the Sky City had set into motion events that would ripple across the world, and they were now at the center of it. But what came next? That was a question even he could not answer. The Council of Mages would need to be informed of what had happened. Seraphina, in particular, would want to know every detail. But what would they do with this knowledge? Would they try to contain the force, seek to understand it, or would they be paralyzed by fear of what they had unleashed? The world's fate hung in the balance, and it seemed that Edmund's role in shaping it was far from over. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they resumed their journey, this time with a clearer sense of purpose. They would return to the council, share what they had learned, and then they would decide what to do next. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with potential dangers, but Edmund felt a renewed sense of determination. He had made a choice, and now he would see it through, whatever the cost. The group traveled in relative silence, each lost in their thoughts as they navigated the familiar trails that would lead them back to the city where the council awaited. The landscape became more forgiving, the dense forests giving way to open plains. The signs of human habitation began to reappear: farms, villages, roads that wound their way through the countryside. It was a stark contrast to the desolation of the Sky City's ruins, a reminder that life continued on, even in the face of monumental change. As they neared the city, the first signs of the new reality they had created became apparent. Strange lights flickered in the distance, unnatural storms brewed on the horizon, and the air hummed with a faint, unfamiliar energy. The world was changing, reacting to the release of the force that had been contained for so long. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being rewritten, and no one could predict what the final outcome would be. They arrived at the city gates as dusk settled over the land. The guards, recognizing Edmund and his companions, quickly ushered them inside. The city was a hub of activity, more so than usual. The news of the Sky City's final collapse had spread quickly, and rumors of strange occurrences were already circulating among the populace. The air was thick with tension, and as they made their way to the council's chambers, Edmund could feel the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions pressing down on him. Seraphina and the other members of the council were waiting for them in the great hall, their faces grim as they listened to the account of what had transpired in the ruins. Edmund spoke plainly, recounting the discovery of the relic, the prophecy, and the choice he had made. He left nothing out, knowing that the full truth was necessary, even if it was difficult to hear. When he finished, the silence in the hall was deafening. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of fear, anger, and uncertainty. Seraphina, who had remained silent throughout Edmund's account, finally spoke, her voice calm but edged with something Edmund couldn't quite place. "You have done what you believed was right, Edmund," she said. "But the consequences of your actions are far-reaching. The world is already beginning to change, and we do not yet know what those changes will bring. The force you released, it is ancient, powerful, and beyond our control. We must prepare for what comes next, whatever that may be." Edmund nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. There was no going back now. The world was on the brink of something new, something potentially catastrophic, and it was up to them to navigate the uncertain future that lay ahead. The council quickly moved into action, organizing efforts to monitor the changes occurring throughout the land, gathering information, and preparing for the worst. Edmund, Lyra, Jackson, and Mirabelle were given the task of leading an expedition to investigate the strange phenomena that had already begun to manifest. Their journey was far from over. In many ways, it was only just beginning. As they left the council chambers, Edmund felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and challenges they could not yet foresee. But he was not alone. He had his companions, and together, they would face whatever came their way. The city was quiet as they prepared for their next journey. The streets, usually bustling with activity, were eerily still, as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Edmund could feel the tension, the unspoken fear that gripped the people as they sensed the changes around them. Lyra, ever the pragmatist, was busy organizing supplies, ensuring they had everything they needed for the expedition. Jackson, with his soldiers' discipline, was checking their weapons, making sure they were ready for whatever threats might emerge. Mirabelle was poring over maps and ancient texts, searching for any clues that might guide them. Edmund stood apart from them for a moment, looking out over the city. The world was different now, changed in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. But he knew one thing: he would not let fear dictate his actions. He had made a choice, and he would see it through to the end. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, they set out once more, leaving the city behind. The road ahead was long, the journey fraught with danger, but Edmund felt a sense of resolve that had eluded him before. The future was uncertain, but it was a future they would face together, as allies, as friends, as something more. The landscape stretched out before them, vast and unknown, filled with the promise of new challenges, new discoveries, and new beginnings. Edmund tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, the weight of his responsibility heavy but bearable. The world was changing, and so was he, and as they moved forward into the unknown, Edmund couldn't help but feel that this was where he was meant to be. Not in the past, not in the ruins of what once was, but here, in the present, forging a path to a future that was theirs to shape. The journey continued, the road winding ever onward, and with each step, the shadows of the past grew fainter, replaced by the light of what was yet to come. The story was far from over, but for now, it was enough to simply keep moving forward.